everyone, this is Jesse from Chosun Yonghwa Review here, this time with another movie adaptation of what's easily the most famous Korean folktale of all time, the Tale of Chunhyang. Chunhyanga, as it's known in Korea, is the most famous of the Korean pansori, which is traditional Korean musical storytelling, a practice that goes far back into Korea's history. Like Hongkil-dong, the origins of Chunhyang are unknown, but is believed to have been passed down orally for centuries before finally being written down sometime before the 17th century. Chunhyang is by far the most popular Korean folktale, having been made into a film over a dozen times since 1923, as well as serving as an inspiration for countless other dramas in Korea, as well as on a limited scale around the world. There are two North Korean versions of this film that are confirmed to exist. 1980's Chunhyang-jun, directed by Yoo Won-jun and Yoon Young-gyu, as well as 1985's Love, Love, My Love, Sarang, Sarang, Ne Sarang, directed by the infamous Shin Sang-ok. In this review, we'll be focusing on the former and lesser known of the two, with 1980's Chunhyang-jun. Although this version was broken into two parts, I'll be covering both parts in one video because I don't see how I could do two different analyses for the same movie, nor do I like leaving something half-finished, so be prepared for what may be the longest review thus far. So gather round, sit back, and pay attention, everyone, as I tell you all about the Tale of Chunhyang. The film begins with the beautiful and soft-spoken Sung Chunhyang weaving some cloth for a friend of her mother's. Her mother's friend praises Chunhyang for her exceptional weaving skills. Wolmei, who is Chunhyang's mother, remarks that she is incredibly talented, beautiful, but laments that due to Wolmei's status as a kiseng, which is a polite word for a prostitute, she never knew her father and wouldn't be able to inherit any fortune after her death. Her friend appeases Wolmei's worries, however, by saying that Chunhyang's beauty is known all throughout Chosun, and that surely a responsible and suitable man would one day court her.
모두 물러들어가고 동원이 소란치 않도록 하라.
We are then introduced to the legend's male protagonist, Mongryong. Mongryong asks his father, who is the governor of Namwon, for his permission to leave the palace and go to the village during Suritnar, which is a Korean holiday. His father rejects his request, however, on the grounds that nobles and peasants shouldn't mix. Luckily for Mongryong, however, his mother provides him with some modest clothes and tells him to go and to just be back early. As fate would have it, the beautiful Changak-doning Chunhyang is also making her way to the village for celebrations, despite warnings from her mother not to make herself into a laughingstock. Chunhyang and her servant Hyangdan make their way to the swing when she suddenly comes face to face with Mongryong, who is instantly infatuated with her beauty. He later observes her swinging gracefully amongst the crowd and describes her as a fairy dancing under the blue sky. He asks his servant who she is, to which he replies that her name is Chunhyang, and goes on to say that she is skilled in painting, weaving, literature, on top of being the most beautiful girl in all of Namwon. Having made up his mind and deciding that she is the one, he calls on his personal valet, who is also his best friend, Youngse, to call on Chunhyang for him. Youngse urges Mongryong to reconsider, saying that he'd just humiliate himself, saying humorously that Chunhyang attracts suitors like a lamp attracts moths. But Mongryong is persistent and overrides Youngse's pleas, ordering him to summon her. Yongse catches up with Chunhyang and Hyangdan and tells them that Ri Mong-Ryong has asked to see Chunhyang. Chunhyang, however, is in disbelief that a noble such as Mongryong would call upon such a modest girl as herself.
아시는 사또댁 도련님이 묘염집 처녀들을 오라가라 하시기 만무한데 그 무슨 당치 않은 말이냐?
Yongse explains by saying that Mongryong is a poetic man, whom when he recites poetry, even the birds will stop to listen, and that he had heard that Chunhyang was a poet as well and would like to discuss it with her. Chunhyang does not relent, however, and leaves Yongse with the words, "The peach blossom blooms only after a bitter winter. The mere gusts of the spring breeze won't change a thing," it itself being a poetic riddle for Mongryong to solve.
함부로 흩날리랴. 무슨 향기로 여겼더냐.
Mongryong spends the entire afternoon well into the night repeating Chunhyang's riddle, struggling to decipher it. He comes to the conclusion that she thinks that he is underestimating her. Determined to win her over, he stays up late into the night penning a proper response to the fair Chunhyang. He hands his reply to Yongse, telling him to deliver it at once and not to return without a reply. Luckily for Yongse, our Chunhyang is awake late into the night playing her kayakum. She receives his letter, itself a poem saying that he cannot sleep due to Chunhyang being on his mind.
취했으니 잠도 절로 꿈도 절로 단잠 잘 줄 알았건만.
잠 못 드는 그 사연이
She quickly pens her own reply to Mongryong, saying that she too cannot sleep and is thinking of him.
설레이노니 아마도 봄바람이 얄궂은 듯 하여라.
저게 바로 춘향이 말이요.
Mongryong, seeing that there's no time like the present, makes his way to her house with Yongse. After initially scaring Hyangdan and Worme, who mistook them for robbers, the mood quickly shifts when Yongse says that he has brought Mongryong to see Chunhyang.
뭐 도련님이? 내가 너무 망을했지. 이런 실수가 있나?
Worme quickly ushers Mongryong into her room and urges Chunhyang to come out to no avail as she is too shy to meet him. While Yongse flirts with Hyangdan, who is busy in the kitchen, Mongryong writes poetry to Chunhyang from outside her room in an attempt to ease her nerves. At the suggestion of Worme, Chunhyang plays a song for him on her kayagum from within her room.
하룻밤만 놓이는 오삭교요. 만나자 리별하는 견우와 직렬하네. 도련님 오이하여 견우되자 하시는고.
Mongryong, realizing that she's not ready to meet him and wishing to respect her boundaries, bids the family farewell and vows to return another time. The following night, he meets Chunhyang's mother once more, this time with a mute Chunhyang at her side. Mongryong gets straight to the point and confesses his love for Chunhyang, words which echo through the young girl's body, causing her to run inside in embarrassment. He follows up his words by asking Chunhyang's mother for permission to marry Chunhyang. Worme is flattered but says that it isn't practical as they are from two separate classes, and that once Mongryong's parents find out, they will force him to abandon Chunhyang, who will end up like her. She urges Mongryong to reconsider, saying that he is also still too young, and that his feelings for Chunhyang are that of lust and not love. Mongryong counters this by saying that he is a man of his words, saying that even if the ocean's dry and the mountains erode, I will love her, and that he would never abandon her, vowing that he can change his parents' minds. All the while, Chunhyang, overhearing Mongryong's profession of love, is unable to stop herself from smiling at the sound of his words. Worme remains unconvinced, however, saying that her former husband said the same exact words to her all those years ago, and that she cannot in good faith allow Chunhyang to follow the same path that she did. I also love how no one bothers to even ask Chunhyang what she thinks, but hey, Chosun everyone. She relents that Mongryong is a sweet young man, but rejects his proposal once more.
평생에 한 번 있는 인간 대사를 어찌 앉은 자리에서 대답을 하나 조르시오.
못할까? 공부밖에 모르는 애가 무슨 딴짓을 한다고 야단이시오.
In the following days, Mongryong's father finds out that he's been sneaking out at night and grounds him from leaving the castle, placing a guard outside of his quarters. Mongryong is unable to stop thinking about Chunhyang, however, and hatches a plan to sneak out of the castle. By trading outfits with Yongse, he escapes the castle with ease and goes to see Chunhyang once again. Chunhyang is so impressed that Mongryong would go as far as to dress as a commoner just to see her. Hiding behind a screen door, Chunhyang tells Mongryong not to risk his life by coming. Mongryong disregards her warnings, however, saying that he would risk everything if it meant that he got to see her. Worme, awoken by the commotion, is just as surprised to see Mongryong dressed as the valet. Mongryong begs Worme to reconsider, saying that he thinks he has more than proven his sincerity. At the behest of Mongryong and Yongse, who has also arrived, Worme asks Chunhyang if she has any objections, to which she remains silent.
도련님 말씀 너도 들었으니 내 뜻을 말해봐라. 도련님이 이다지 간절히 청하시니 어떻게 했으면 좋겠냐?
Taking that as consent, she asks Mongryong to write an engagement poem to Chunhyang as proof, since their marriage can't be made public. Mongryong happily obliges, while Yongse tries his luck again with Hyangdan by asking her to share a bottle of wine with him.
금노주가 대수냐?
글쎄 안 돼.
좋아, 그럼 아무거나 내라.
Worme leaves to see what's taking Hyangdan and Yongse so long with the food. They're making babies, Worme! Leaving Chunhyang alone with her new husband face to face for the first time. Chunhyang nervously reads the poem he'd written for her, and Mongryong takes his young wife for a walk under the moonlight sky, playfully teasing her and bringing her flowers he'd picked along the trail. In the following days, Chunhyang quickly warms to her new husband, often playing the kayagum while he recites poetry to her. Whether it be taking walks together under the evening sun, or working on paintings together, the two quickly become inseparable, spending every moment of every day by each other's side, infatuated, young, and in love. Soon after, however, the harsh realities of 16th century Korea come crashing down upon Mongryong, when his father, and by extension his whole family, is recalled to Seoul. Mongryong in desperation confides to his mother about his marriage to Chunhyang and asks if she may bring her. His mother is infuriated by the sudden revelation that Mongryong has married a peasant, saying that if this were to be made public, that his entire family would lose everything. He forbids Mongryong from bringing Chunhyang and orders the guards to pack his things as they depart the following morning. Later that day, a happy and excited Chunhyang talks with Hyangdan about what their life will be like in Seoul. It's then she's greeted by her husband, who breaks the news that she cannot come with him to Seoul. Chunhyang's heart, now ripped out of her chest, cries out to him that he'd broken his promise so soon, the promise that he wouldn't abandon her.
도련 금강산 높은 봉이 평지되고 바다 말라 땅이 되어도 이별 말자 하신 말씀 어찌 벌써 잊으시고 그런 말씀하시나이까? 아니오이다. 아니오이다.
Wolme, overhearing this, cries out and chastises Mongryong for going against his word, berating him for betraying her daughter as her husband had done to her. She tells Mongryong that he's ruined Chunhyang's life when Chunhyang steps in to stop her mother's berating of him, saying that this whole situation hurts him as well.
도련님 가슴 얼마나 아프시겠어. 너무 이러지 마오. 향단아, 어머니 모시고 들어가거라.
아이고.
도련님, 늙으신 어머님 말씀 너여 마오이다. 도련님.
아이고.
It's here that Yongse arrives and tells Mongryong that he must go, or that his father's guards will come for him. He ushers Yongse away and meets with Chunhyang over tea one last time. During this time, he tells his young wife that he will take the Confucian examinations while in Seoul, and if he can score high enough, his parents will allow the marriage. He gives Chunhyang a mirror as a symbol of his love for her, telling her that, in it, my conscience will be as clear as the sky.
도련님.
Chunhyang tells him to study hard and that she will wait for him until the end of time. She gives him in return a jade ring, saying that her love for him is as pure and as flawless as jade.
춘향,
Mongryong tells her that he will always love her and to remember his promise to return. He then bids his young wife Chunhyang farewell, and part 1 ends with Chunhyang and Hyangdan watching from afar as Mongryong rides his horse to Seoul with a promise in his heart to return to her. Part 2 picks up 2 full years after Part 1, with Chunhyang overlooking the same valley where her dear Mongryong departed on horseback, vowing to return. In her monologue, she laments that despite the winter and spring both having come to pass, that Mongryong has yet to return. Alas, she vows to continue to wait with the patience of a saint for her husband's return. At home, Chunhyang returns to see a box full of cloth, pendants, and other gifts from a man by the name of Mr. Hong, who wishes to court Chunhyang. Wolme urges Chunhyang to accept these gifts, but Chunhyang is undeterred. This causes Wolme to cry out to Chunhyang that if Mongryong wanted to come back, he would have at least written a letter to her once in the 2 years he'd been gone. Chunhyang, backed up by Hyangdan and Wolme's friends, nevertheless persists to wait for Mongryong, convinced that he will return. Meanwhile, Namwon's new governor arrives in town. He is depicted immediately as a corrupt, hateful, oppressive nobleman who orders the arrest of peasants who plead to him that they're starving. He asks the palace's head Kiseng who is the most beautiful girl in Namwon, to which she replies, Chunhyang. The governor, curious to see what she looks like, orders for her to be summoned to him. When the governor's valets arrive at Chunhyang's house, Wormei attempts to stop them. Chunhyang, however, emerges from their home and voluntarily goes before the governor, amid protests from Hyangdan and Wormei. The governor and his personal valet kindly ask that she give up on Mongryong and become a Kiseng, where she will be able to live in the palace with whatever she wants. Chunhyang, elegant in her composure, replies that she is not a Kiseng, but a married woman waiting dutifully for her husband to return.
천하 백성 위하여 선정을 베푸시기 바라나이다.
선정을 베풀라고.
The governor laughs and lightheartedly entertains Chunhyang's dedication some more, and explains to her that all nobles are like butterflies, skipping from flower to flower, and that Chunhyang was just one of those flowers, and that Mongryong had already long forgotten about her.
저는 기생이 아니오라. 낭군을 기다려 수절하는 유부녀옵니다.
Chunhyang persists, however, saying once again that she is not a prostitute, and that even if he doesn't return in this life, she will wait for him in the next. At this point, the governor starts to get impatient and commands her to sleep with him. Chunhyang resists, however, and calls out the governor for being corrupt, saying that nobles are supposed to lead by example, not merely make and break laws at will to suit their own selfish desires.
소녀는 들은 적이 없나이다.
뭐시?
백성 다스리는 사또님이 어찌 도리를 어기시고 유부녀의 절개를 꺾으려 하시나이까?
내 년.
Shocked by this brazen display of disobedience, the governor has her arrested immediately. She is strung up and bound in preparation to be flogged. The governor asks his valet to read her of her crimes of disobedience. A defiant Chunhyang shouts back to the valet, asking him what the punishment is for trying to abduct and rape a young girl. The governor, now completely fed up with her defiance, orders the flogging to begin immediately. The guards begin striking Chunhyang with thunderous blows from their wooden paddles, striking so hard that they break under the sheer force. Chunhyang, despite being under excruciating pain, refuses to submit to the governor's demand, choosing to remain loyal to her husband. Y'all hoes need to be like Chunhyang. Meanwhile, the governor grows more authoritarian day by day, charging up to 100% interest on all rice loans. Those who cannot pay this impossible amount, hint, everyone, will have their property seized as payment. When asked if Chunhyang has agreed to sleep with him yet, his valet replies that she still refuses and would rather die 1,000 deaths than become a Kiseng. But he tells the governor that he will try to convince her again one more time.
오늘부터 농구미를 수청들게 해다.
이제라도 용서를 빌면 너희 모녀를 귀히 대접할 것이고 끝내 고역하면 오는 보름날 사또님 생신잔치에 끌어내어 목을 칠 것이니.
Later that night, after refusing the request of the governor one last time, the valet tells her that she will be executed on the 15th of this month, which is the governor's birthday. Soon after he leaves, Chunhyang is visited by Hyangdan and Yongse, who are now engaged. Hyangdan tells Chunhyang that Wormei's condition has worsened since finding out about her daughter's execution. Yongse breaks down into tears, apologizing to Chunhyang for causing all of this.
모시고 올 테니 편지 한 장 써주오이다.
아씨, 정리하고 붓은 가져왔어요.
He tells Chunhyang that he is going to Seoul to tell Mongryong what's going on, saying that he will leave immediately and asks Chunhyang to write a letter to him on pen and paper that Hyangdan provides. Chunhyang is initially reluctant to bother Mongryong with news of her misfortune, but relents when Yongse tells her that she has to see him one last time.
이석에 새겨 내 무덤에 세우도록 말씀이나 전해다오.
아씨,
도련님 안 보시고 어떻게 가신단 말이야? 내일 새벽 일찍 떠나 사또 생일 전에 다녀올 테니 딴 말씀 말고 편지나 한 장 써주오이다.
아씨.
In what is nothing short of a miracle, on his journey to Seoul, Yongse is greeted by a man dressed as a peasant who addresses him as a valet. When Yongse replies how he knew that he was a valet, the man reveals his face hidden behind his fan, revealing himself to be none other than Mongryong on his way back home from Seoul.
이런 거야.
Yongse, although happy to be reunited with his friend, is distraught to see that he is dressed as a commoner. That is, until he notices the seal on his clothing, which causes Mongryong to admit that he aced his test and has ascended to become an inspector, which is a very senior position above that of even a governor. Yongse tells him of Chunhyang's situation. He delivers a letter to Mongryong, whom, upon reading it, tearfully exclaims that he will save her. Quickly assembling his team of lawyers and valets, he sends them ahead to investigate the governor of Namwon and etches a plan to save Chunhyang. Upon arriving in Namwon, he stops by Chunhyang's home, half expecting her to greet him as he nears the porch as was such 100 times before, only to fade away like a ghost of times long since past. He intrudes on Hyangdan and Wormei's prayers to the gods to save Chunhyang. Hyangdan, who nearly faints upon seeing him, quickly brings Wormei to see him, who welcomes his return. He assures Wormei that despite him erroneously saying that he's failed his exams, he can still save Chunhyang. Together, they walk to Chunhyang's prison cell on the night before her execution, where from above, Mongryong calls out to his long-lost wife, the mere voice of which causes Chunhyang to spring up with life, calling out her husband's name. Together, the two reach for the ironclad bar windows, their arms just long enough to touch.
도련님, 기다렸나이다. 꿈결에도 기다렸나이다.
춘향, 이 모두 그대의 죄가 아니라 이놈의 허물이여. 용서하오.
Wormei tells Chunhyang of Mongryong's failed test, calling him out for having the gall to come back after these failures. Chunhyang, fair and loving as ever before, says that he is her beloved husband whether he succeeds or fails, and that blaming him won't solve anything. She tells Mongryong of her last request to be covered by his coat and to be buried in a quiet place. Mongryong begins to lose his cool at this point. He tells Chunhyang that he loves her and will get her out, and not to do anything crazy until she sees him again. The following morning, on the governor's birthday, Mongryong interrupts the governor's banquet, masquerading as an insane beggar. At the party, he purposefully makes a fool out of himself in order to leave a discreet message that he is a royal inspector to the governor's subordinates. It isn't until all of his subordinates catch on to what he's doing and have left that Mongryong reveals that he is the secret royal inspector who has come to overthrow the corrupt governor. Upon revealing his royal seal, Mongryong's own personal army storms the palace, making short work of the corrupt officials. The governor attempts to flee out the back gate of the palace, but is met by Yongse, who beats him to death with a wooden stick. Lady Chunhyang is brought out of her cell and brought before the inspector, unaware of who he is due to his face being obstructed. He asks her if she has any last words. Chunhyang, unwavering in her dedication and love for her husband, declares that she has no regrets and will gladly die rather than lie with another man. It's at this point that the inspector hands her an item, a gift from long ago. When inspected by Chunhyang, she recognizes it as the jade ring from long ago she'd given to Mongryong. The inspector then reveals his face to be that of Mongryong, not a peasant, but a royal inspector. Chunhyang, overcome with joy and shock, collapses to the ground, but not before being reunited in her lover's arms. Wol-me, Hyangdan, and Yongse follow soon after, and all engage in a somber embrace, while onlookers from afar shed tears of joy. The film ends with Mongryong and Chunhyang now happily and publicly married, taking their usual walks together amongst the blooming flowers, still young, still happy, still hopelessly in love, a state in which they would remain for all time within the annals of history. Okay, I have to say this right out of the gate, I loved this version. Being a story that has 12 film adaptations, it can certainly be hard to stand out, but this film rises above most of them in its dynamic storytelling, multi-dimensional characters, as well as its depiction of Chunhyang and Mongryong's profound, sincere love for each other. This is an excellent example of a classic story adapted to the silver screen the right way. Let's start with the characters. First of all, the beautiful Kim Young-suk steals the spotlight in her portrayal of Sung Chunhyang. Through Young-suk's performance, we really get to see Chunhyang as the shy yet crafty, intelligent, kind, and fiercely loyal woman. This generosity and loyalty isn't just limited to her husband, but to others as well. When Hyangdan asks what she will do after Chunhyang moves to Seoul, Chunhyang, without skipping a beat, tells her that she would join her, no questions asked. Later on, we see Chunhyang further these sentiments, confiding in Hyangdan that ever since they took her in as an orphan, Chunhyang has never seen her as a servant, rather as the sister she never had. She urges Hyangdan to marry Yongse and to leave and live a happy life, even offering to make Hyangdan's wedding dress. This causes Hyangdan to cry, as they were probably the kindest words anyone had ever told her, and it speaks to the extreme generosity of Chunhyang's personality. She is loyal and trusting, perhaps to a fault. Despite not seeing Mongryong for a total of 3 years and 3 months, she never even considers meeting another man, believing firmly that he will return to be with her, even when everyone around her is telling her otherwise. It's this unwavering loyalty that almost costs her her life, but instead grants her a life of unconditional love and happiness, a great character and a great development arc over the course of the story. We really get to see her transform from the shy, quiet girl into the loyal wife she promised to be. Mongryong is another great character. From the beginning, we see that he doesn't view himself as an ordinary noble. His best friend Yongse is his valet, which is just a polite word for a slave. Despite this, he bears no feeling of superiority over Yongse, often allowing Yongse to speak to him informally. It's very clear that Yongse is more than just a servant, but his best friend, and treats him accordingly. As the story progresses, we get to see that he is very often critical of the status quo in Korean society at the time, often criticizing the caste system and questioning its necessity. This reaches its tipping point after meeting Chunhyang, whose peasant status suddenly means nothing to him, nor do the repercussions of marrying a peasant act as any sort of deterrent to him. Chunhyang is who he wanted to be with, and that was that. He is also seen not as an overbearing, jealous husband, rather as a kind and loving man who sincerely adores Chunhyang with all his heart, seeing her as his equal, a very rare occurrence even in modern Korean society. We see him give her all the necessary space she needs when he arrives at their house before their courtship. Not demanding or overbearing, he respects her privacy and doesn't force her to see him. He is a kind and humble man to all, who makes a promise to return after trying everything he could to bring her with him to Seoul, and in the end, he kept that promise, and was rewarded with the love of his life for the rest of his life. I also thoroughly enjoyed the small romance that, although heavily implied, does occur between Hyangdan and Yongse. They, like Chunhyang and Mongryong, are two lovers who met by circumstance. Both, in a sense, are tragic characters, both peasants without parents sworn into obedience, but are lucky enough to serve honest, kind-hearted people who treat them not as slaves, but as family. Although Yongse is depicted as sort of a prankster comic relief character in the beginning, we truly get to see his character blossom in the second half, where he breaks down and apologizes to Chunhyang, feeling that it was his fault as he was the one who brought Chunhyang and Mongryong together, and vows to search for Mongryong to find a solution to this problem. Whether it be Chunhyang, Mongryong, Hyungda, or Yongse, the characters are all very well written and are fully developed. Even Warme, who by all means could have easily married off Chunhyang to Mongryong simply because he's a noble, she initially rejects him, not wanting her only daughter to end up as a prostitute like she was. We see Chunhyang repay this by refusing to become a prostitute, even under the threat of death, as she knows that her death will hurt Warme less than to see her only daughter become a prostitute. I think it's a great example of a mother-daughter relationship, always looking out for each other because they're all that they have. And that speaks to what I like the most about the characters in this movie, is that all of the protagonists are not static. They all grow and develop over time. Their personalities become more fleshed out. They're not one-dimensional. The only ones who have one-dimensional personalities are the supporting characters. But Chunhyang, Mongryong, Yongse, Hyungda, and Wolme all have these beautiful personalities that grow as the story progresses. And that is a very unique thing for North Korean films. I'm very impressed by that. Regarding the themes of this film, one of the more surprising themes is that there are none. Well, at least there are no themes that deviate from the original plot of Chunhyang. No, seriously, there's nothing in this storyline that is rooted in socialist values or North Korean propaganda. This is a true, cut and dry adaptation of a timeless Korean folktale, with the politics being non-existent. You could argue that the underlying themes are that of the obsolescence and cruelty of the social caste system, as well as the corrupt Korean government of the time, but again, that was always a part of the Tale of Chunhyang. These aren't exclusive to the North Korean version of the story, they're in the South Korean version and in the original as well. It's very obvious that the two directors followed the source material very closely and wanted to do the Tale of Chunhyang justice, and damn does it really show. All of the costumes and sets and backgrounds, the environments, they're all great. The songs, while not of the high production values of a Flower Girl, are still great nonetheless. I really love North Korean adaptations of Korean folktales. I think they're done very, very well. And the songs in this version are certainly no exception. A great soundtrack. When comparing it to the most recent version of Chunhyang to hit the silver screen, that being the 2000 South Korean film Chunhyang, it's clear that there are two different approaches to the story here. For one, the North Korean version is completely chaste, with Chunhyang and Mongryong never kissing, not even once, nor is it ever implied that they've even consummated their marriage yet. Now, it's well known that North Korean movies are very timid when it comes to showing skinship, and I think the directors use this to depict a more innocent side of Chunhyang and Mongryong's relationship. whereas 2000's Chunhyang shows a more intimate side of a newlywed couple, which by intimate I mean lots and lots of sex, which the 2000 version is full of. Instead, 1980's Chunhyang focuses on more of the innocence of a new, profound love. Like your first real relationship, it's full of innocent, overdramatic puppy love that we all know and remember fondly as something that was new at the time. And I think that this movie pulls it off very well without overdoing it. In short, I don't think the 2000 Chunhyang is worse than the 1980 version, nor do I think that the 1980 version is better. I see them as two sides of the same coin. One goes for a more raw, intimate, realistic approach depicting the hypersexuality that often befalls new couples, while the other goes for the romantic, chaste, idealistic view of love as something sincere and pure. All in all, this particular North Korean version of Chunhyang is very, very well done. And to me, it's proof that North Korea is capable of making a damn good film when politics take a back seat, which unfortunately is a rare occurrence. Nevertheless, it's always a welcome occurrence to see a timeless classic treated with the proper treatment and respect that it deserves. And 1980's Chunhyang does just that. So watch it, everyone. And while you do that, have a great day.